So yeah, I absolutely love your story and the whole, you've seen such a lovely array of things through your life. And I think that enables us, doesn't it? I suppose when you saw, what you saw in Kenya and along the way, that enables you to think, well, wow, if other people can achieve things, why not me? Why not me? And I think that's a really, really powerful one.
Yeah.
So talk us a bit more. So you spoke about I'm so thankful that I was in the era that I am, with like my mobile phone, with training courses, because I'm not sure I would ever manage to get to where, you guys, there's, a lot of kind of people, well, not that many, but a few who managed to kind of educate themselves through, just thinking creatively, basically, and came up with these kind of solutions of, and I love it. And that's the word I use all the time, is acquiring, especially in my letters, which you also taught me. So yeah, talk us through how you came across this first property that you acquired in the mountains.
Okay, so 2 years after I got back from Africa, the Kalahari Desert, I'd gone skiing with a group of 12 people, and including my parents, actually. And while we were there, we'd had an incident on the mountain. My sister wasn't very well, and I decided not to go back up there. And I went into an estate agent where I literally spoke pidgin French, not really even pidgin French. And I expected them to treat me like I'd been treated when I went into a Volvo garage to get a company car, a couple of years earlier. And they didn't. They were quite serious. And I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. I mean, I looked about 14. So this was in 1980. This was in 1987 or 1988. And yeah, I couldn't believe they took me seriously. And what happened was, I did then take one of the party into the estate agent who spoke fluent French, just so that I could double check I'd understood what I thought I'd understood. And a few hours later, I was found in a cafe with my Filofax, which again tells everybody of my age. And I was like writing figures down. And they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm just jotting down some figures because, I'm just having a think and look and just playing around with some figures." And they said, "Why? Gillie, you can't afford the door of a car. Why are you in there contemplating, wasting time?" I said, "Well, that's just what I want to do." And I think the message there to people is, be really careful who you listen to, because if I had taken on board what those people who loved me, cared for me, said, I wouldn't have that chalet. And what would the future have held? I don't know. I'm not saying I wouldn't have got into property, but that chalet has been a monumental part of my journey. And the funny thing was, the guy that owned the ski company that we were with was coming into town that evening. So I thought, I'm just going to sit next to him at dinner. So I sat next to him. I said, "Look, if I was to get a property in this resort, would you take it for a period of time in the winter?" "Definitely," he said, "as long as it's 4 bedrooms as a minimum." So when I got home, they said the 4-bedroomed house was gone, but there was a 6-bedroom one left. So I thought, it doesn't really matter because I can't afford half a bedroom. So based on the way I'm planning to do this, it doesn't make any, it's like Monopoly, isn't it? It doesn't really matter. So I ended up signing a contract with the ski guy in the back of a van at a motocross stadium in Oxford, where his son was doing some motocross, and ended up with this chalet based on a contract and the ability to do like something very similar to an option. Now, some months later, I got told, because this was a chalet that was being built. It was like a little estate that was being built. And they rang me to say, "I'm really sorry, but the chalet won't be ready in time." So I sort of rang the ski company thinking they'd pull out of the deal. And they said, "Oh, by the way, we found out the chalet won't be ready. So we're basically putting an extra thing in the brochure to state that it won't be available till February." And I describe it like this to people, Emma. My journey has been like a river between 2 riverbanks, and across that river are stepping stones. And this is how I saw it back then when I was trying to get the chalet, because obviously a number of things happened that set me back. And it was, the stepping stones were sometimes flat and sometimes they were really pointed. And when they were really pointed, I used to think, well, never mind. it's been a really good journey. I've learned a lot. This is not about the destination. It is about the journey. It is about learning. And I don't know how I was wise then at thinking that, but I did. Then I'd get to a flat stone, but somehow the door opened. I went in there thinking, this is going to be the end of the journey. And it opened. And then sometimes the rocks would be really flat. And I'd nearly drown through pride and arrogance. And it was a massive learning. Now, I did get to the other side, and it's been a real blessing. But what I learned was you can't necessarily determine that the line of stones will be a completely straight line. Sometimes you are deviated. And on your journey in property, it's really important to remember that, because if you're, like a mule, or you're sort of totally stuck in your ways and dogmatic about exactly which way you've got to go, you could end up trampling on people, losing your friends, having nobody in your world to get to where you want to get to. However, if you allow yourself to be directed as you need to be, you may not get to exactly the same place on the other side of the river as you thought you were going to. It could be less money, it could be more money. But the difference is you'll end up far more fulfilled with people that want to help you, support you, and surround you, that are good. So it's really important to understand that it is all about the journey. We have to stop fixating on what we want, and not what we want, but what we're determined to get. It's really good to have determination, but if you're completely fixated, what you're doing is you're chasing money. What you're doing is you're saying, I will cross anything, and I will trample on anyone to get what I want. That is not what it's about. And what happens is we end up coming from the wrong place. We end up chasing something rather than drawing stuff to us and working hard to get where we need to get, and learning on the way in our journey. Because if the destination is all that matters and the journey doesn't, we end up with different results. And even if you get what you aim to get, you probably will find you're not fulfilled, you're not content, and you're just chasing more and more and more. So that's a little bit of how I got the chalet. There was a lot more to it, as you can probably imagine. I was I ended up purchasing it, obviously, in the end. And back in those days, I never met the bank, never met them, not at all. To this day, I never met them. And then I refinanced to do some more options, etc., in other countries, and buy land in other countries, and so on. So yeah, it was a brilliant start to my property journey.
Amazing. And I think that's a really key one, isn't it? That sometimes if we're too fixated, I sort of touched on it earlier, and don't kind of listen to our intuition or see what's around us, we actually miss. So I love the story of the person who's drowning in the middle of the ocean, and he shouts up to God, save me, and a boat comes past and says, here you go. And he says, no, God's going to save me. And then, and another, a big liner comes past and he still doesn't get in. You have to know that it might not look like what you think it's going to be, but be really open to those other kind of opportunities that might strike up. And in fact, even just speaking to you this morning, it's made me my brain has started worrying about some of the things that we've spoken about in the past. And I've suddenly thought, oh, you know what, that might actually be relevant to this person that I've met. So it's really interesting, always looking at your kind of, I suppose, your pot of knowledge, but being really open to what people are bringing to you, who you're meeting, what they're talking about. And I think you're the absolute epitome of that, is just being completely sort of open and thinking just because, there's a wall there doesn't mean that you can't go through the door that's just hidden up the road. And I think a lot of us miss that door along the journey. So
I think it's about creativity, isn't it? And I think that a lot of the time people can't be creative because they don't have clarity. And my 5 C's, Emma, that the first and most important thing I believe in property is clarity. If you don't have clarity of different subjects, clarity of what you want, clarity of what due diligence is, clarity of area, clarity of strategy, clarity of all these clarity of self, clarity of goals. If you don't have clarity, in understanding a topic or a strategy, or you have any doubts in the back of your head, anything that might be confusion, because of course that's the opposite to clarity, you are playing with fire, because that's when we make wrong decisions. Wrong decisions for ourselves, wrong decisions for deals, wrong decisions for strategies, for area, for everything. So people need to understand that clarity isn't like 17 months of counseling. It's understanding where you're confused, finding out all the areas of confusion where you're pretending you're not, maybe. So those little things in the back of your head that go, I'm not really sure about that. You find clarity in those areas. You find somebody to help you. I'm very happy to help, where you just literally get every single area of confusion ended. It all becomes clarity, so that where you are now, once you've got clarity, you'll be confident. And guess what you gain with confidence? The ability to be creative. And this creativity is monumental in a world where there is competition. There's many people doing property. Believe you me, more people aren't. But when you're in the world of property, you feel like many people are. And you feel like you can't stack deals. I put an article out this week on the fact that if I got a penny for everybody that rang me that says, Gillie, nothing stacks, I'd be a far wealthier woman now. And it's working out why it's not stacking. And 90% of the time, by the way, you know I make up all my statistics, but 90% of the time, the reason it doesn't stack is because they don't know how to be creative. They don't know how to problem solve something. They don't know how to gain a solution. Now, I'm not stating that every property you'll be able to do by finding a solution to make enough money. Of course I'm not. But many people miss out on deals because they look at them, they go, it doesn't stack. And they don't know how to bring that creative arm out in order to be a person who has solutions to a strategy. So it's really, really important to understand creativity in the world of property.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think it was definitely through sort of, you know, our sort of learnings that got me to the stage that I just absolutely love. When I was doing my huge push to get the hotel, which obviously you helped me with a purchase lease option. So obviously, you know, met a huge number, well, quite a large number of people. There was lots of offering on deals, and then lots of sitting in a cafe going, right, how am I going to do this? How's this going to work? And it's amazing when you actually just sit there. And I used to love it. I had this amazing cafe that I used to love going to. It felt like a bit of a treat. And you'd sit there and just go, right, we're not leaving until, you know, we've come up with some ideas. And actually, when you start throwing out crazier ideas, suddenly something that seemed really crazy, actually you think, well, you know what, there's parts and elements of that really could work.
Yeah.
So I really love that. And that's why I'm a huge fan of Think and Grow Rich and, you know, Bob Proctor and all these people. And one of the big things for them is masterminding. And I know, Gillie, you're the same. Everyone come together, bashing heads. And it's incredible what can come from that. So, yeah, I absolutely love that whole sort of creativity, because I think I used to think that I wasn't creative because I can't draw, or, you know, the archetypal creativity. But actually, I am, you know, really creative, but in a sense when you look at different things and you come up with different ideas. So yeah, that's really interesting. So Gillie, let's talk a bit more about your purchase lease options. I know that obviously you then did go into property and you were extremely or are extremely successful, did some great deals. I know I visited a few of your deals as well. You've trained your children, so you were a massive inspiration for me with my kids, and certainly I'm pushing them every step of the way to be getting into property as well. So yeah, just talk us a bit more through your journey and how the sort of purchase lease option thing came about too.
Okay, so as I said, purchase lease options, I started doing them. I didn't even know that was what they were called. So I'd done France. I never called it a purchase lease option. I then came to I was living in the UK, and I decided to acquire a piece of land. And I said to the owner, if you give me 10 years to pay it off, I will give you 3 times its value. And I had no idea that a pound was exchanged and a purchase lease option was done through the solicitors, but it was. I was then able to build a house with no money on the land because the bank realised that the value of it would far exceed what the cost was going to be. So I got a full mortgage on a house that I built on the land. Over the 10 years, I was able to refinance and pay the money to the landowner, and had no idea that that's what they called a purchase lease option. So I did, that was my second one. The first house I did as a purchase lease option was about 15 years ago, or maybe a bit longer than that. I still own that house today. There's not every single option I've done, I've always exercised. So all of them I've exercised. I'm in the middle of, and the one that I was going to say the wonderful thing is actually, but that sounds a bit arrogant. The thing is with me is that I'm still doing them. So I'm in the middle of doing an option in Italy, which I'd love to show you, Emma, when we meet. It's a beautiful property that you've seen it actually, because I offered it to all of you on the course. Many times I offered it to people. It was a lady who did one of my year-long programs who was selling it. She bought it 25 years ago with her husband in the hopes of doing it up, and they hadn't had time to go out there to do it up. It's on 3.5 hectares. It's got 3 floors, and eventually we'll have 8 triple bedrooms, so sleep 24, whatever that is. And it will have a tennis court and a swimming pool. It's already got the middle floor done. We did an option 4 years ago where we paid £1. We paid nothing else, and we're just buying it now for £80,000. So it's completely ridiculous. Worth more than that now, probably, but that's not really relevant. It's just a very, very good deal. But that was an option. So I do options in other countries. My youngest pupil, my youngest delegate or mentee was a 13-year-old girl, and her father did an option last year in Greece on the island of Corfu. So we have to be careful in other countries when we're doing options if they're with people who live out there, because we've got to be sure that they see the deal as, and it's all done so that it's watertight in contracts with solicitors. The people I bought the Italian place from were British, so it was very, very easy. So
just in case anyone's listening is not completely sure what a purchase lease option is, do you mind just
of course,
clarifying that for us?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, the terminology of a purchase lease option is to have the option to purchase a property, but not the obligation. So you have the rights to purchase it for a time that is agreed, but you do not have to, so you can walk away. And I know some of you are probably sitting there saying, who on earth in their right mind would agree to that? But believe you me, there are many, many people who'd bite your arm off right now for a purchase lease option. So it's made up of 3 things. And this is where people overcomplicate it. I wrote a book that I think that Emma read called Understand Your Truth to Find Success. And it's all about mindset. And one of the problems we encounter with purchase lease options is people think it's too good to be true. It's all the mindset stuff. And in actual fact, the only criteria any person needs is to have the right mindset, because you don't need money. You might need some money, but you don't need money yourself. And often you don't need any money. So it's available to everybody. I love it because it's all inclusive. Instead of being for the wealthy or the contractor, property is now for everybody who has the right mindset. So it starts with just 3 things, and people overcomplicate it. So I want you to understand these 3 things are what make up a standard option. First of all, it's what you decide you can pay for the property in the event you're going to buy it. So at the very beginning, set in stone is a price. So I generally go for the asking price or maybe a bit more, unless it's on for ridiculously too much money, very, very overpriced. So let's say it was on the market for 400,000. I'd offer 400,000. The second point is, how long is this contract we call an option going to last for as a maximum? So if I'm buying something or doing an option where I want to hold it and keep it, I generally ask for 5 years. I might start for 7 with 7, and then we'll negotiate and it will come down to 5. I don't like going much below that. My sons and I have done them for 4. Now, I have done one for 8, but that wasn't because I wanted to buy and hold it in the same way. It was about getting planning permission to convert something. The third thing, it's called a purchase lease option because we're leasing something. There's a property there which they might well be able to rent if we didn't do the deal. So what are we prepared to give them each month until such time that we buy it, walk away, assign it on, or ask for an extension? So the 3 things: what you're going to buy it for, how long this option contract is going to last for as a maximum, and what you're going to give them each month. Now, the 4th thing is, I don't generally talk about this as one of the main points, but it's something you need to understand. In order for an option to be valid, as it were, you've got to exchange £1 as a minimum. And of course, the solicitors do that. But it's called your option fee. But sometimes they may want more money up front. So although I'm saying you don't need money, sometimes you might, in which case you can choose to walk away from the deal or do it. But let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, they've got a tax bill to pay and they go, look, we'd love to do an option with you, but we've got this £10,000 tax bill to pay that's got to be paid. So you work out in advance what you're going to make over a 5-year period. And generally it's no less than £1,000 a month. Well, certainly not on my watch anyway, but often it can be for more. So let's say it's £2,000 over 5 years. That's going to give you £120,000 profit. Would you still do the deal if you had to spend 10 grand at the beginning? Well, of course you would, because you're going to make 110 instead of 120. So you can work out what your profits are going to be in advance for most strategies, and you can work out whether it's going to be a problem if you walk away. Now, if you walk away from that deal and you don't assign it, sell it, or buy it, the worst case scenario is you make 110 instead of 120. If you buy it, it's not really relevant, is it? Because you'll continue to make that profit. So sometimes there will be a deposit. I would always say, though, that if you pay a deposit up front, you always ask for it to come off the price at the end. If you don't buy it, though, as I just said, and you walk away, you lose that 10 grand. And you've got to look at whether that's okay against the profit that you're going to make. Sometimes it might be that you go, well, I'm not going to give a deposit. They're happy with £1. But if I want to make £2,000 profit a month, I need to do a bit of a refurb. So therefore, I've got to put 10 or 20 grand into it, which I'll borrow off an investor. If I walk away at the end, am I going to be happy with losing that 20 grand? Well, if I'm making 120, yeah, probably I am going to be okay with that. So sometimes there will be money to pay. Sometimes there won't. So those 4 things again: what you're going to buy it for if you buy it, that's set in stone at the start, how long it's going to last for as a maximum, what you're going to pay them each month, and whether it's £1 or it's something different. Now, beyond that, an option is whatever the negotiations bring up. So, that is a basic option. They may decide they want a pair of shoes every month. They may decide that they want a bit of the equity if there's an uplift in capital appreciation at the end. They may decide that they want you to pay for a holiday once a year. An option is unique. It's like if I came to you and offered you all a canvas to paint a picture on but didn't give you a title, they'd all come back different, wouldn't they? That's what an option's like. They're all different. I mean, very rarely will you find two the same. So if I gave everybody listening £50,000 and I said, go and do a deal or go and get some options, there's no way they're going to come back with the same deals. If I gave you, I don't know, £5,000 and said, or there was 2 houses identical next door to each other and both were going to do an option, I can guarantee the option contract would be different.
Yeah, amazing. And I think this is, for me with you, Gillie, was a huge eye-opening moment, is when, usually, let's say, you're on Rightmove and you've noticed that there's a house for sale and a house for rent, and it's like, those are kind of, that might be useful for an option. Yeah. And then when I'm talking to people, they say something like, let's say they say, it's up for 150. I've had a chat with them, blah, 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 blah. they might be interested. And then they say something like, so I think I'm going to offer them 120,000 over 6 years. And this, and I'm like, going back to what you said, is basically you want to offer them what they want. Now, there may be some changes in the background, but inherently, if they want 150,000, you kind of want to see if you can give them 150,000, but on your terms, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because if you try and reduce the price and then do it over a number of years, they're just going to be there going, this is absolutely crackers.
It is. It just annoy them. It's
Exactly.
all about people, isn't it, Emma? It's all about people. So I always describe it, I don't know if you remember, like old-fashioned weighing scales. So you start, let's say it's on for 150. I would very rarely offer less than that. So you start with 150,000. You might ask for 5 years, and you might offer to give them £1,000 a month. They may come back and they might go, 5 years is too much, Gillie. So they drop it to 4, which means the scales are not in balance anymore. Which means I'll probably go, okay, well, if you're going to drop it by a year, that gives me less time for the property to go up in capital with capital appreciation. So I might bring down the price to 145. But I'm only doing that based on their change first. So because I always say to people, you don't always have to be in control, complete control, but you never want to be controlled. There's a big difference. So we want to get the balance right. So will £5,000 make all the difference in the world when you come to get a mortgage if you buy it at the end? Of course it won't. But you're just saying, if you're going to move that, I'm going to move that ever so slightly. And that's how sometimes we bring the price down, because they push the prices differently on something else, whether it be the amount they might want more per month. Or you might say, okay, we won't change the asking price, but if you're going to do it for less than a number of years, we're going to bring down the rents a little bit. So you're just changing it so that the balance is correct. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's so powerful, actually. And it's a silly thing, isn't it? Because sometimes they'll say to you, oh, yeah, well, yeah, it's all fine, but I just want to knock it down 10,000. And actually, it's a bit like kind of working with kids, with animals. If you start just giving yourself away, they're just going to keep taking. And so if they say, oh, yeah, that's fine, we'll do that, they suddenly think, oh, well, maybe I could do this. And they start adding things in. Whereas absolutely, and I talk to that about my mentors as well, from what you said, mentees, is that you have this kind of this seesaw plan. And if they've changed it, it's so simple, isn't it? That they've changed it like that. So therefore, you need to make it something else. And quite often I have been in the situation where I've called you up and said, they've changed this, but I can't think of anything else. What else could I change? And we'll sit there going, well, actually, you can do this. And I think that's really key, because I find myself, and I think knowing yourself and learning about yourself over the years, I am one of these people, and I suppose being a female as well, and mums and things like that, you do tend to, it's a natural thing to give away, isn't it? But in business, and certainly in this scenario, you can't just give things away. That just doesn't work. So yeah, having this kind of visualization of this, seeing it, is really key. And